That one bullshit PlayStation trophy. Now, Dragon Ball Z Kakarot is quite frankly a pretty good game, and I'm actually really enjoying it as it's a nice nostalgia sort of trip. I've only ever brought one other Dragon Ball game, and that was Fighters, and that one just extremely pissed me off. So this one is a nice change of pace. It's a single player action RPG, and the trophies are fairly straightforward, to be honest. There's not really too many ones that you might miss or have to go out of your way to get, except for one trophy, which I think is a bit bullshit, and that is the "you can't touch this" trophy, which requires you to get 50 instant victories on enemies. So, when flying around in the open world, you will sometimes come across random battles against enemies, whether they're Red Ribbon Army robots, Cybermen, or other Saiyans flying around, depending on where you are. You will constantly get attacked by these groups of enemies, forcing you to do a sometimes prolonged battle, fighting the same group of enemies that you fought like hundreds of times before as you're going through the story. And it can grate, to be honest, because all the battles tend to play the same, you do the same moves. But what this trophy wants you to do instead is finish them off without actually fighting them. And you do this by flying really fast. You push in the left stick to give a sort of speed boost, and if you can hit a lower level than you enemy before the fight initiates, you will just take them out and get an instant S rank. And that's what you have to do for this trophy, but you have to do it 50 times. So one of the bullshit things is that when you're flying around, the camera's quite far out, so the enemies are quite small, so they can be really hard to see and then actually line up and hit before you fly past them. Other times you might be flying and then enemies will just get you before you get a chance to do this move, causing you to then have to do a prolonged battle with them to get them out of the fucking way, and that just wastes those enemies. Other times you might even do the move properly, but you happen to just bump into a higher level enemy than you, and for some reason this doesn't let you do the move. You won't actually kill them outright, so then you're just forced to fight these again, and it really grates because you can't actually see the enemy's power level when you're going at this speed to be able to do the move. You can only do it in first person when you're flying at the slower paced level, but by that point they've probably come towards you before you've seen the level. So it's a bit awkward. It's really awkward to try and get them. Now, you probably could fly around and complete the game and get maybe 20 of these naturally, but definitely be prepared for some post-game grind as you fly around to try and get the rest of these, and that's more annoying than getting punched in the back by Frieza, in my opinion.
If you wish to save him, feel free to try at any time.
So, while it's a fairly easy trophy to get, it is a bit awkward in how you're flying around and that you can't see the levels of the enemies. But probably one of the most annoying parts is that it's just monotonous, especially when you're just flying around a large open area and you're not finding any of these enemies. For me, it was when I wanted to get them, I wouldn't be able to, and then when I didn't want to get the enemies, they would be coming constantly to fight me and getting in the way of my story progress. So it is a bit of it's probably the shittest one in the list, but the list itself is pretty good. It's just this one is just a bit tedious, to be fair. While 50 isn't a massive amount to get, I think it is enough where it becomes a grind and not just a trophy that you'll just casually get while playing, like a lot of the other trophies in this list. And if that doesn't annoy you, then the next thing will, as regardless of who you're playing as, you're going to hear the same fucking voice acting line over and over again. Goku says the same thing every time you approach some enemies in the open world, and that just really grates. But perhaps the worst, most bullshit one is when you're playing as Gohan, because you'll just hear the same fucking thing over and over again. And I'm sorry, Gohan, but you got really annoying really fast with your fucking I think I can handle this. The amount of times I've heard that thing playing this game is just so fucking annoying. And while it isn't necessarily the trophy's fault, it is something that comes up when you're going for this trophy, so for that reason, I'm counting it as a bullshit reason for this trophy being bullshit. Just shut the fuck up, Gohan, okay? I've heard it enough. You're probably the strongest one on Earth right now. You can fucking handle some shitty Cybermen. Jesus Christ. So, for me, the best place to do this was in the west area, the section just beyond the Capsule Corp, as this area of Green Hills seem to have a lot of lower level enemies more than the higher levels, so the chances of me flying around and hitting them in this section here was far greater than anywhere else I really saw. There were occasional spots where I could get a few, but this one here was just one that it was reliable, and I think I got the majority of my kills from this section. So all I had to do really was just fly around, doing a lap of this area again and again, going back and forth along this section, just hoping that I could line it up and get these done as quick as possible. So hell yeah, you finally found a good spot to get it, so you constantly fly around trying to get as many as possible, only for you to then realise that, hang on a minute, where have all the goddamn enemies gone? Oh, for fuck's sake, you gotta be kidding me. This is fucking devastating. Now I know how Vegeta feels.
Vegeta had finally begun to experience true dread. Overcome with hopelessness and frustration, he was reduced to tears. The mighty prince of the warrior race had lost his will to fight.
So yeah, enemies can have a habit of just disappearing on your ass, especially when you're in a certain area for a long time, and the game is quite glitchy as well. There's been a few times where I've been flying around in the open world and enemies have just stopped fighting me altogether. They're just standing there still and I can't even initiate fights or hit them. So it can be a bit temperamental when you're trying to get this, as the game is a bit rough around the edges. Your best bet when going for this trophy is to try and just do it in, like, stagger it, do it bit by bit, so maybe do 5 at one time and then 5 a bit later. So when you're in a bit of the story or the intermission and you see some enemies and you notice they're lower level, just stay in that area for a couple of minutes and try and get as many as you can until it starts to fuck you over by constantly putting you in a battle. So at that point, you're better off just killing those enemies and just moving on, progressing the story. And then later on, you're probably going to find another section where you can do the same sort of thing. And then hopefully by the end of the game, you've got enough or close enough to the 50 so that your post-game grind isn't that bad. That's probably the best sort of tip I can give, really. If you see an area where there's low-level enemies, stick around there for a while, but once the game tries to screw you over with battles constantly, you're better off just moving on. It's an easy trophy to get, but it is a monotonous one, and that's why they can't touch this trophy, and Dragon Ball Z Kakarot gets a bullshit trophy rating of...
Bullshit.